It is December, which means that I am going to be talking about all the books that I have read this year. Do not worry, that's not a lot. I don't read a lot. I mean, I read every single day. I just read very, very slowly. Currently, I am reading Stephen King's 11/22/63, and it is big. It is very big. I am very much enjoying it though. It's so fun. It's a lot of fun. I'm like 150 pages in, so you know. Next year I'll have read one book. But this year I have read how many? Like 9, I think. No, less. I think I've read less because there's also some short stories and a novella in there. We'll talk about all of it. The short stories I'm also gonna count, and you'll see why. All right, let's talk about some books. Hey, don't forget there's gonna be spoilers in this video for all the books that I talk about, so be prepared. I want to start off with Percy Jackson and The Titan's Curse, which is the 3rd book in the series. Last year I read the 1st and the 2nd, which were incredible. The 3rd is also incredible. It was in January that I read it, so it's been a little while, pretty much a year. I was actually surprised that this book took like a crazy turn. The whole story took a crazy turn. Characters were introduced that were super important to the entire story, and it was weird, but it was very, very cool. I was actually surprised by how much I liked this one because it felt like there were stakes that were bigger than Grover being stuck with a Cyclops. That's what he was doing in the 2nd book, right? Like there's this looming story in the franchise about Percy and Kronos and this entire thing about what Percy's gonna do when he turns 16. I believe that's what it was. The 2nd book, while very fun, also felt almost pointless to some degree. That's gonna come off weird, but I really liked the 2nd book. But the 3rd book, I was like, yes, this is sick. I like this. I really liked some of the characters, but obviously Annabeth is much less in this book, which is sad, but it makes sense for the story. But I really like the new characters that were added, of which I totally forget the name. I know about is Rachel already in this one? I don't remember. I read them all like right after each other pretty much. But Rebecca, Rachel, and the kid, what's his name? What is his name? I said Rebecca, but that's not her name. It was Rebecca. I meant Bianca. What's her brother's name? Nico, that's right. Obviously Thalia is in this one. It's just so cool. The whole story is sick. So the 3rd book is awesome, which leads me to the 4th book. I don't remember. Oh, the Labyrinth. That was so cool too. I don't have to go into much detail about this. I did not understand how it's possible that the writer, Rick Riordan, filmed an entire story inside of the Labyrinth, pretty much. That was wild to me, and it was so cool. I highly recommend just reading the Percy Jackson books, but I was so surprised by how cool the 4th book is. The Labyrinth, very, very cool location to have most of your story take place. And then obviously the 5th book, which is The Last Olympian, is the ending to this story, and that too was surprising how it's a pretty big book, you know, like 400 pages or something, and it takes place over a couple of days mostly. As far as I remember, it's been a little while too, but it's pretty insane. So much happens, so many characters that make you go like, yeah, let's go. Oh crap, book, be careful. So excited about all kinds of characters doing their thing and things happening. It's hard. It's so hard to not spoil anything. I did predict some of the things throughout the books, like, again, spoiler warning, in the 1st book the whole stuff with Luke happens where it's clear that he's the bad guy, but there's more to it throughout the rest of the books. But I very early on just called it, obviously, like he's going to be a good guy again. I don't remember exactly what happens, but there was a lead more to it, and I really like that, and that's how the fight with Kronos actually became interesting. I like that. I also called it that Rachel was going to be important from the moment she was introduced. That is the 3rd book. It is the 3rd book because that's when the stuff in the museum happens with Thalia, right? I think so. So that was also interesting. I gotta say, I really liked Rachel in the story. For the majority of the story that she was introduced in, I really did. But the moment she became a more important character in the actual story, I was kind of like, I don't think I care much about Rachel anymore. She became this character that just kind of sucked. And that's unfortunate. And maybe that's a me problem, but I really liked their dynamic until she became as important as she was. Does that make sense? I don't know. I didn't like her ending much. But overall, the Percy Jackson books are so much fun. I think they are so much fun. And there are 5. I believe there's a 6th that isn't related to the main storyline. But these 5 are awesome. And I'm excited as I'm filming this. The new season of Percy Jackson is like a week away, like season 2. I'm excited to watch that. Season 1, it wasn't the best. It was exciting, but it wasn't the best. Better than the movie though. But I'm super excited to see season 2. That's gonna be interesting. I'm so excited. So I read that. There was a bit of a break though between book 3 and 4, I believe. I do not remember. Ignore that. What I wanted to say was that I also read these books. And you might remember from last year that I read 1, 2, and 3. Did I mention 3? I think I may have mentioned 3. I read 3 last year as well. This year I read 4, and I put that off for so long because I did not like the ending of 3. 3 itself was good. Let me actually elaborate a little. This is the Natural series. This is about imagine the show Criminal Minds, but teenagers having sort of powers almost where they can profile very well naturally, or they can tell when someone's lying, they can read someone's emotion, or they're insane with statistics. That's what this is about. And the first book was so much fun. I had a blast with that book. It was one of my favorite books of the year I read that in, and I think that's last year. I'm not entirely sure, but I think so. Then I read the second book, and it sucked. It was horrible. But there were still questions I had about the main story that was going on. Because the main character, Cassie, her mother was killed when she was a kid. And there were so many questions about that still that needed the other books to get answered. Book 3 was much, much better again. I really liked book 3 because it focused on a character that I liked, the one with the statistics, Sloane. The ending sucked because they set up the 4th book and they set it up in a way that I didn't like because they were talking about cults. I do not like cults in fiction. In real life, I've never had to deal with it, thankfully. But in fiction, I do not like cults. In Criminal Minds, whenever there's an episode that has something cult related in it, I do not usually like those. There are some good ones, but overall, not my thing. This is pretty heavy, holy crap. But the final book, Bad Blood, awful. Absolutely awful. I was so disappointed by the ending. I'm going to spoil it for you right now. For 4 books, you are looking for an answer as to what happened to Cassie's mother, and you're hoping, because it's very obvious the way it was written from the first book, it was very obvious that she was going to still be alive. At least I felt that way. I don't know if everyone read it and thought, yeah, she's still alive, but I certainly did. So, surprise, surprise, by the 4th book, which was actually very interesting, she's still alive. Whenever Cassie was profiling, she always talked like, you, bloody, 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 blah, and the you was then the unknown subject, or the unsub. In the books, you have certain chapters in between where it's from the perspective of you, which was always the unknown subject. In the last book, that is her mother, and that was very cool. I really like that, especially when it clicks, you're suddenly like, oh my god, that's her mother. And it was great. I really like that. So obviously the story is working towards them reuniting, and that was also very cool. But you are reading 4 books, and they're all leading to this one point. She finds out her mother is alive, and she tries to save her, get her back. 4 books. And the moment they finally reunite, she has to, and here again, spoilers, she has to kill her mother. And that bothered me so much. So much. Because a story like that makes sense. It is a twist that makes sense. It is painful. It is gut-wrenching to the reader. But I personally thought that it was bad. It was not necessary to do it that way. I did not like it. And guess what? There was another story for the Naturals, a novella called 12, and it was all fan service, and it was so annoying. It was interesting to see some of the history for some of the characters, but I just didn't like it. The Naturals has one really good book, and the rest is kinda either mid or bad. So that was my rant for The Naturals. I read book 4 and the novella. I'm so sad that I didn't like this. Anyway, I'm talking a lot. How are you? Did you read any cool books? Awesome, I think. I hope you did. Now, if you were gonna ask me how many books did you buy this year, the number would be much higher than the amount of books that I've read, which is interesting. Not surprising, but interesting. Let's continue to the next book that I've read, which is my personal favorite book of the year. And it is not fiction, which means it's non-fiction. I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy. I desperately want to make a video where I talk about non-fiction, about the books that I've read. That only happened when I finished reading this one. And look how that cover looks. It is good. This book is incredible. I grew up watching iCarly and a little bit of Sam and Cat, although I got a little too old for TV at that point, which is weird, but I was always on my laptop at that point. I grew up with iCarly, so I knew Jeanette McCurdy as Sam Puckett? I think Puckett. Yes. And at some point I did know that a lot was going on with Nickelodeon and, who she refers to as the creator, and I knew that stuff was going on. I had no idea about everything that she was going through, and this is what that story is, and you can very obviously tell what it's about. Her mother died, and she tells the entire story of her childhood from her own perspective, with a heavy focus on her life with her mother, and there is not much of a life without her mother, at least not in her childhood. And clearly, because it says I'm glad my mom died, it is a bit of a shock, because that is an interesting sentence, a great title that instantly hooks you, but it shows you that it was rough, and this story is rough. I said before that I do not read a lot. Like, I read every single day, but I do not read a lot every single day. This book, I bought it, and that afternoon I read about half of it already. I don't usually do that. This shows how good this book actually is. And it is non-fiction. I've read a couple of non-fiction books. This one got me hooked from the start. It is a funny read, which is surprising, but I promise it is a funny read. But it is also devastating. Absolutely devastating. And you just feel for her. And you look at your own life and you go, was that normal? Was that okay? It is such an incredible and an important book to read, because it's all about child actors and the pressure that they feel, the industry, the film world overall. It is a very important book, and I think more people should read it, and I know a lot of people have read it, but I just really love this book, and I'm serious when I say that this was my favorite book of the year. So I highly recommend reading this. This is a fantastic book. Okay, next up, because I'm yapping too much. This is too much. Next up is Home Before Dark, Riley Sager. This is my very first Riley Sager book. My sister has talked about Riley Sager. She has also said that it's usually a hit or miss. This was very much a hit. This was so good. It says here somewhere, if you like The Haunting of Hill House, you're going to love Home Before Dark. I love The Haunting of Hill House so much. The Haunting of Hill House is one of my favorite shows of all time. It is fantastic. I love that whole vibe. It is so good. And Home Before Dark absolutely lives up to that sentence that I just said. That expectation, 100%. And it is mind-blowing how good it is. I have never been scared reading a book. I've read some Stephen King, not any of the proper horror stuff, although people say that Carrie is horror. I don't feel that way. I have never been scared reading a book. This one made me very uncomfortable. There's things with snakes that made me go, okay, guess I'm scared of snakes now. It is very good. So if you like scary stuff, this one, it starts off a little confusing, but as soon as you understand what's happening, it is very entertaining. And I honestly cannot wait to read more Riley Sager, which will undoubtedly mean that I'm going to be buying more books that I'm not going to read for a while. Read this one if you like Haunting of Hill House. And if you haven't seen The Haunting of Hill House, go watch it. Let's watch it together, all of us. I love that show. I've seen it like 5 times now. Okay. Yes. Was that? No, I've got short stories. I started reading. We're not done yet. We're almost done. I started reading Edgar Allan Poe short stories. Turns out my English is not as good as I thought it was. At the same time, who writes like that? It's the same with when I read Sherlock Holmes. I think I read that this year too. I don't quite remember, so I'm not gonna count. I read some Sherlock Holmes stories, and it was pretty doable. There are some words in there that I just didn't know or that have different meanings now. But with Edgar Allan Poe, I am often guessing. It is very difficult, and if someone were to write that way now, I'd probably make fun of them and tell them, hey, why be like that? Write normally. Just write how you would talk. But maybe that was the case back when this was written. From when is this? Hold up. Not 2003. That's not a thing. 1838. Between 1838 and 1846. That's a little while ago. That's nearly 200 years ago. It is very obvious that Edgar Allan Poe was a very talented writer. And I have not read any of his poems. I've only read 2 short stories of his, which were The Mask of the Red Death and The Fall of the House of Usher. Reason for that is once again related to The Haunting of Hill House. I watched The Haunting of Hill House, and after that I read the book because I know that Mike Flanagan likes to base his stories on books, and it was very, very loosely based on the book Haunting of Hill House, which I like, by the way. I really, really enjoyed the book too. And then I watched The Haunting of Bly Manor, Midnight Mass, and I started with the Fall of the House of Usher. I only watched 1 episode. Wasn't quite as hooked as with the rest. I'm still planning on watching it though at some point. But knowing of the show, I was in a bookstore in the UK, I think. I'm pretty sure. It must have been the UK. And I saw this book, and for some reason I knew that The Fall of the House of Usher was in here, so I grabbed it and I was like, I'm gonna get this. And then it laid on my shelf for 2 years. And I think that was probably for the better, because my English has improved a lot over the many years, and even over the past 2 years it has improved. And it keeps improving the more you read, and that's why we read, people. That's why we read, so we know words. But I read The Mask of the Red Death, which was very confusing, but interesting. And then The Fall of the House of Usher, which was less confusing and also interesting, but I'm going to be very honest with you, a lot of it did not make sense to me, and I was happy when it was over. I read 2 Edgar Allan Poe short stories, and the next one would be The Black Cat, and I don't know if that's any good, but maybe I'll read it at some point. It was such a struggle to read just like 20 pages. 20 pages was a lot when you don't understand half the words. So those were all the books that I have read this year. I have also read my own book twice. After Friday Comes Saturday is a time loop story where 17-year-old Thomas is trying to make a silly video on a bridge when he finds Robin ready to jump off the ledge. And he tries to help her, he fails, and suddenly he finds himself back on the same day, at the start of the same day, which is a Friday. He tries his absolute best to help her, to make sure she doesn't die, but it's not as easy as he thought. So he's got to try and do a lot to make sure that that Friday becomes a Saturday again. And it is a story about struggle, about understanding, and about control. I am very proud of this book. It comes out February 3rd. I'm saying that. Is that true? How did I forget my own book's release date? February 3rd. February 3rd, after Friday Comes Saturday, will be released. It will be released on paperback, hardcover, which is this one. I'm so happy with it. This is the new cover, by the way. You see those shoes? I can't point. Shoes. It looks very, very nice. The text looks much better this way. I'm very, very happy with it. After Friday Comes Saturday will, like I said, be released paperback, hardcover, ebook, maybe even audiobook if I can get myself to read something like that, and if I sound good enough. Anyway, that's all the books that I read this year. Thank you all for hanging out with me. I know that I didn't post as much this year as I would like, but I still want to. I have so many ideas, and I gotta promote this book, I gotta promote it when it comes out. So I'll be doing that, and I can't wait to start my next writing project too. I have yet to decide which one exactly that will be, but I will eventually find out. So thank you for watching. Subscribe, let me know what books you've read this year and what your favorite was, and I'll see you all next time. Alright, Bye.